What's going on my fantasy basketball fans? It has been a tough couple of weeks. You have been struggling to stay competitive against your opponent because you have several players in the health and safety protocol due to COVID, but you have made it through. Some of your top dogs are returning, but there are a few players that you are looking at your roster and wondering, damn, when am I going to get these players back? If you stick around, I'll have a few more players who can help you daily because even though this is a weekly thing with the fantasy basketball season, due to the enormous amount of players in the protocol, we got to look at things from a daily perspective. Make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the YouTube channel for more. All right, y'all. So, yes, it has been a crazy year so far in fantasy basketball. I personally have struggled to find players. I mean, everyone is just scrambling. I look at my rosters and I'm still nowhere near where some of you may be. Some of your players have returned. I am still struggling. I look and I got at least 8, 9 players who are still out. And a lot of these guys I am just not willing to release based on who is available in free agency. And some of you may be thinking like that as well. However, there may be some gems who may be able to help you in the short term. And we're going to talk about a few of those players today. Early on in the week, I released some information which should help you with several players who can help your team right now. I'm going to talk about a few more players based on a few different updates. I'll talk about 5 players based on some current updates and some other players entering the health and safety protocol or just some injuries. I'm going to start this off with Terrence Mann, /guard with the Clippers. Now, I've talked about him during the preseason and a few times during the season. He has had some really good games and he has had some really bad games. He has kind of been inconsistent. However, Paul George is going to be out at least 3 weeks, between 3 to 4 weeks, is going to be out. And Kawhi Leonard is out. So we already know Jackson is going to step up, obviously. Bledsoe's going to step up. But Batum is dealing with an ankle injury. So normally I would say he's going to step up. So who else is going to step up for this team? Terrence Mann has to step up, and he's going to step up. The talent is there. Lou is pretty much dangling the step it up and play and be aggressive. He's trying to tell this kid, go on and do it. He doesn't have a choice right now because the top dogs are out and they're going to need his production. And he is going to produce. He is one of those players who I said is a long-term ad until Kawhi comes back this season. I don't even think he's going to come back this year, but we'll see. Whatever. By the time he comes back, fantasy playoffs may be over. But nonetheless, Mann is a long-term player to add, but he will have that inconsistent play at times. But right now, with Paul George being out, he should have a larger role. He's going to have a whole lot of opportunity to help the Clippers stay competitive. Your two best players are out. It's going to be hard. But nonetheless, every team is dealing with something, whether that is just regular injuries or your COVID protocol. So, Mann is a player who should be able to help you long term for the remainder of the season. But right now, in the short term, he should be able to help you on a whole nother level. So if he is available in your league, go on and pick him up. He should be available. And if he is, don't think twice. Do not wait a game. And he has one of those nights where he has about 30 plus fantasy points because someone else is going to pick him up and then you're going to miss out. We don't second guess what we're doing. We look at it, we analyze it, and we act. So act right now and pick up Mann because he should be able to help you right now in a much larger role than you anticipated. And that's pretty much how it's going this season. You have players who You expect them to get 15, 20 minutes. No, he's going to be playing at least 30, 35 minutes a night, maybe some nights even 40, depending on what's going on with that roster. So a lot of these players about opportunity. This is opportunity. He had an opportunity, and now that opportunity is expanding into a larger role for him. And I have no doubts that he is going to produce. He's going to produce. Right now, he's getting between 20 and 22 fantasy points. He's averaging a little over 10 points per game and 5.3 rebounds. That's going to increase over the time period that Paul George is out. So you can look at him over the next, at least give yourself a minimum of 2.5 to 3 weeks that you are invested in Terrence Mann, because again, his role is going to increase and there's opportunity. And you've seen it with several players being out, that opportunity has allowed these guys to showcase their talent and help us win and compete during this difficult time, because it's difficult, y'all. I got players in my lineup that I never heard of. But you know what? Again, I don't care who they are. I don't care how long they've been in the league. If they can produce and help my team win, guess what? I'm invested in them. And you should too. And go on and pick up Terrence Mann. Let's talk about Frank Jackson. Okay, so his opportunity is going to be a short-term situation. You figure with Killian Hayes out and Cade Cunningham out, next man up. So opportunities there for this guard with the Pistons. On a season, average about 10 points a game. That has increased over the last 2 weeks to 13 points per game. He's getting between 14 and 16 fantasy points. The last 2 games, 17 points, 19 points. So he's going to help you. I'm not saying he's going to be the most consistent guy every night. But what I am saying is right now, I am looking at fantasy basketball on a daily perspective, because I have so many players that are out that I can't right now look long term. I'm treating it daily and looking at players on the waiver wire who can help my team daily. He may be a player that can help your team up until the duration that Cade Cunningham returns. Some of those nights, it may be a bit inconsistent, but he can help you on most nights right now. So he is a short-term solution. Short-term. Do not look at him as a long-term option. Short-term, and again, don't expect him to have 40 fantasy points. I do not expect that. But what I do believe is he can get you between 20 to 25 fantasy points. And that is very good production, considering when you look down your roster and everyone is out, or at least the majority of everyone. My roster, everybody out, but I'm hoping that your roster is not struggling that much. I mean, I'm losing games at the beginning of the week, like, for instance, Monday, I didn't have anyone that I was able to start against someone. And now I'm looking at this person up by 200 points. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make that up. But then when I look at the waiver wire, it just wasn't anybody available that would be able to help my team. All the players I recommended to you guys, trust I've evaluated them and made some moves. But right now, there's nobody available. The waiver wire in this one league is dried up. I'm like, ooh, it's a struggle for me. But anyways, hopefully it's not a struggle for you. And regardless, we're going to continue to work to get through this difficult time. Omer Yurtseven, center with the Miami Heat, has been boiling out of his mind. You got Dwayne Dedmon out, and you got Bam out. So where is the production going to be coming from? They're getting some players back, but he is still going to see a lot of opportunity because he's a big, and they are shorter bigs. And PJ Tucker is, dealing with some injuries as well. But even with Tucker returning, I still expect him to have a role until Dedmon comes back. Once Dedmon comes back, I believe his minutes will pretty much go down. As well as he's played, he still may have a role, but not a role to where we would focus on having him on our roster. So he is a short term. And everybody I'm talking about is short term, with the exception of Mann and then someone else I'll I'll name later on, let you know. But this young man on the season's average between 11 and 13 fantasy points. That sound like somebody you want to add? No. Naturally, you're going to scroll through waivers and be like, I'm good, because he is not going to help my team win. But what he is doing right now, he's going to help your team compete and potentially win, because some of these scores, especially in a points-based league, the scoring may be much lower with so many players being out. But as the players return, you'll start seeing things get back to normal until we have the next wave where players are out. We're pretty much at the mercy of the health and safety protocol due to COVID and it's holidays. So you already know what it is, but that still doesn't stop us from trying to be the most competitive team that we can be. And now with this guy, right now, he's averaging 8 points and 11.5 rebounds since he's been given an opportunity. When I look at a center who's averaging over 11 rebounds, he can help your team definitely in rebounding in a categories-based league. So if you are in a categories-based league and you are just struggling, you don't have any centers that can help, or you are really struggling with rebounds, he can help you in the short term. And when I say short, I mean it's short. Once you start seeing more of those players come back for Miami, his role is going to disappear. So don't get attached to him long term. We're not attached to any of these guys that we're talking about over the last week or two. We are not attached to them. They are as good as players in the protocol. So if these players come out or return from injuries, we have to move on from some of these guys, because that's just what it is. And again, you have to do what you have to do out here in these fantasy basketball streets to stay competitive. Nonetheless, the last few games, 15 rebounds, 12 rebounds, 13 rebounds, 12 rebounds. I want a center who can produce that for me right now. There's some centers who are starters and they don't even average 10 rebounds or can't even get 10 rebounds in a game. So if he can help me in that area in the category-based league, I will gladly accept his production right now. And you guys should too. So consider him. Let's talk about Precious Achiuwa. He is currently just returning from COVID protocol. Now, he has played very solid this season, averaging 8.4 points and a little over 8 rebounds per game. He has a role with the Raptors, and once he returns, he's going to continue to have that role. He is available in at least more than 85 or higher percent in leagues. So pick him up, because he'll help your team, especially when you have other players who are not available or may end up back in the protocol. Just because a player is out of the protocol now does not mean they won't return to it based on everything that's going on. You got holidays and you have so much more going on throughout the season. So if you see him on waivers, pick him up. When you think about him and Omer Yurtseven, Precious has the long-term value compared to Omer. Not saying that you drop Omer and pick up Precious. It really just depends on what your roster needs. But for me, if I had the choice and I need to choose between these two guys, I'm going to go with Precious, because I know this is going to be more of a long-term thing. And they still both will help your team every night. But once again, you start seeing more players back for the Heat, then again, Omer's production is going to go down. But again, short term. That's how we look at it. Precious is a long term. So Mann and Precious are long-term players who are going to help their team for the remainder of the season, barring any injuries or whatever else may happen this year. So again, those two guys are long-term. Now, again, I want to go back to Omer. I used him in a daily fantasy, and his salary was only $4,800. He got me over 30 fantasy points. So that's great value. So if you're not even playing the regular fantasy basketball, you can look at daily and maybe utilize him there. He'll help. Instead of spending 14,000 on a center and then say they give the same amount of production that's not good value right there. Let's talk about Otto Porter. I mentioned him earlier this week. Go on and check out that video. It's available on YouTube and available on all podcasting platforms, where I talk about several different players you should add to help you. Some are long-term and some are short-term ads. Otto Porter was on that list. I'll mention him again today because now Draymond is in the protocol, and so they'll be without Draymond. Porter has been playing very well and making the most of his opportunity due to several players being in the protocol. Lee is in the protocol. Jordan Poole is in the protocol. Wiggins was in the protocol. He's out now, but you see all these different players in and out, and he has been playing very, very well. The last week, he's averaged over 13 points and 7.5, almost 8 rebounds per game. That is really, really good. You find some type of production like that on waivers, considering everything that's been going on, you're winning. At least in my book, you're winning, you know? So again, you have to just do what you have to do. And once you start seeing the other guys return for the Warriors, it'll be hit or miss with Otto Porter. So I don't look at him as a long-term solution. I look at him as once Draymond and definitely Poole return, his value is going to decrease drastically. He may have one of those nights where he has a solid game, but it's going to be hit or miss, and it's going to be more misses than you hitting. So at that point in time, once you start seeing Draymond and Poole returning, you move on from him. You know, and that's just pretty much what you have to do with some of these guys. But nonetheless, it is what it is. We adjust, and we have been making a lot of adjustments. I don't know about you guys, but it has been a long season, and we haven't even hit 2022. But it's a challenge, but you know, you just have to hang in there and continue to work the waiver wire, make trades. Kimber Walker, I talked about him on one of my episodes, and I spoke about the fact that right now he is a prime candidate for so high, like really high right now. He is playing out of his mind, and if you have him, you don't want to hold on to him long term because right now Rose is out. We all know how Tibbs feels about Rose. Not saying that Kimber won't have a role once Rose returns, but I don't think he'll be able to sustain that type of production that he is producing right now. And so what that means for you is you may have a player who's sitting at the end of your bench again, because you got to know Tibbs. Tibbs is just who he is. And you don't want to be that guy who has Kimber and he's helped you. Some of those games you didn't even win, but now he's sitting on your bench. He doesn't have any more value. Right now, his value is at an all-time high, and even more so because some teams are desperate for production. If you are in a position where you haven't been affected by the protocol and other injuries and whatnot, then you can use Kimber in a trade to get what you need, because again, some teams are desperate because, and again, in my case, if you got 8 players, maybe even 9 injured, what are you really going to do? Are you dropping one of your top players for a player who's on a 10-day contract with the team? No, you are not. Maybe you'll make a move via a trade. That is always an option to help your team, but be smart. And if you are the person considering Kimber, you want to be careful with how much you're willing to give up for Kimber, because you got to understand that he's not going to sustain that level of production. Now, if I have Kimber, I am trying to sell high. I'm talking him up all day. Yeah, Kimber this, Kimber that, boom, boom, boom. He is Kimber back early in Charlotte. We already know that ain't it. But again, you got to do what you have to do out here in these fantasy basketball streets. And if someone is willing to give you a king's ransom for Kimber, we accept. We're not going to say, no, that's too much. No, we're going to say, okay, let's do it. Let's hit accept right now. So again, if you have Kimber, work on a strategy of selling high on Kimber. And also what I will say is look through the waiver wire, and there are probably players who shouldn't be on waivers, because again, some managers are so desperate to win right now, or for a night to win whatever battle they're winning on that night, that they're dropping players and adding players that it's probably not a good idea to drop. But if you are in a position to pick up some of these players, do so. So again, go on out there and look at the waiver wire. Consider some of the guys I am talking about and I've been talking about over the last few days, but also just look and see if there are players who you're like, okay, he should be on waivers. I'm going to pick him up right now. No second guess some of those guys. There are players who have been producing all season, and you're like, I'm gonna have to pick him up. I've done so myself, and you should do as well. All right, y'all. Make sure you hit the like button and are subscribed to the YouTube channel. If you like listening to podcasts while you are out strolling in the streets or whatnot, go on and check us out on all major podcasting platforms. And make sure, again, you are subscribed to the YouTube channel and leave comments on what kind of content you want to see. And also let me know what players you have been adding. And the bonus, let me know if you have seen any players who shouldn't be on waivers and they've been dropped out of desperation. All right, y'all. Peace.
Thanks for listening to The Score Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to The Score for more fun and great advice on how to win at fantasy basketball. And if you've got comments or questions about The Score, send them to waiverwirequeen@gmail.com. The Score.